Well, just to be cognizant of everyone's time, and I know we have a lot to get through today, let me go ahead and get started. For new people, I am Mia Cash, Overpass Talent Advocate Manager. Really excited to welcome you to part one of our three-part series in Objections with our Overpass Sales Manager, Dennis Hamilton. I will let him explain in more detail about each of the different parts that he will cover. We are also joined by one of our Overpass account executive, Luis Carrillo, who will be helping Dennis as he goes over the ins and outs of objections. As usual, we will have time for questions at the end, so feel free throughout the presentation to put them in the chat or in the Q&A option at the bottom, and we will make sure to go over them near the end. So without further ado, I will let Dennis and Luis take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mia. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you are. So we're going to start a three-part series on handling objections. It's one of the most critical things that we can do as professional salespeople is learn very simple, but yet highly effective strategies as far as handling objections. It's the one differentiator you'll have on your time invested in a contract versus the dollars that return to you personally. Almost all of our contracts have commissions that are involved on top of your base rate. So literally, if you leverage your time as far as doing quality customer qualifications, engaging with your client, building relationship or rapport, giving your value proposition in a very effective way, and then handling objections at the end, you'll find that that is going to make you the difference between a quote unquote peddler and a professional sales exec. So this is really important stuff. Luckily, we have it recorded for future reference, and we'll be posting these on YouTube kind of in series and maybe even mine some clips out to add to the Overpass contractor site. So let me share my screen and let's get started. There we go. There's the screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Are we visible? Mia? Okay, cool. All right, so how remote works. Let's talk about objections. The very first thing to talk about is why this is so important. So the first point is learning the difference between a question, a statement, and an objection is critical to becoming a sales professional. So many times when I am in, even with our team at times, right? When I am in a discovery call with a client or a sales call with a client, I will notice that people will answer the first two, a question or a statement, as if it's an objection. One of the worst things you can possibly do in sales, because what happens is you come across very defensive about the value proposition for your product if you don't identify which of these three it is and handle it correctly. Nothing will increase your success in sales more than qualification, delivering your value proposition, handling objections, what I just stated earlier. And then the third point, handling objections the proper way will exponentially increase your earnings. So if you want to maximize the dollars returned between your hours invested, which is by definition, the definition of sales labor. So we're all trying to optimize our return versus the hours we're putting in every day. Handling objections is one of the most key points that we'll go through. The reason is if you are great at handling objections, and you can add 30 to 35% to your closing ratio. If you look at most of your compensation plans, that will exponentially increase your income, like double it in many cases. So super important stuff. Let's dig in. So what does it take to handle objections properly? Learn to discern. I talked about it before. Is it a question? Is it a statement? Or is it a true objection? On part one today, we're going to do a little role play on all three of these, but we're going to talk more about a question, answer, trial close. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Part two, statement. We're going to talk about sales techniques, things like feel, felt, found closes, comparative analysis, reduction to the ridiculous. I'm going to teach you at least 4 basic sales techniques that you can use as far as when somebody makes a definitive statement. A lot of you may call these rebuttals, but you can form your own rebuttal scripts not just take them off of your sales script of whatever your contract or whatever your client might have given you. And then the third part is true objection handling. So that is when you've hit an impasse with a client. You cannot move any further because you have a hard objection. Those require a little bit more scripting and a little bit more thought process, but we're going to go through a couple of basics in a couple of weeks and show you how you can format or make your own objection handling presentations. They'll always be a little bit different depending on the product or service that you are selling. So let's go to the next step. A question. Never mistake a question for an objection. It's just a question. So many times I will see account executives immediately get defensive when asked a question. It's just a question. Answer it, restate, answer, trial close. Why would you want to restate? When you restate a question, you're making sure that you're actually answering the question that that actual client or prospect has. I'm even guilty at this of times that I'll be at a discovery call with a client. I will mistake the question that they actually asked. And then halfway through, they'll go, okay, that's good information, but that's not what I was asking. Super important, restate the question. Make sure you're answering the question that they have. Answer the question, trial close. We'll talk about it in a minute. Trial closes are very easy to format, but it's basically a verification that the customer understands the point that you've just made in answering that question. And then handling a question as an objection will kill a deal. It can kill it dead. It'll kill a sale because they will always receive you as being defensive if you're going through a very long and blown out explanation over just a simple question that you could have answered. A statement would be something like, I don't like this because, or I'm looking at other options, or that price seems high, or I'm not interested. This is where you use a sales idea or a rebuttal. In other words, are these hard objections? They're not, because you have not reached an impasse in any of these statements. I don't like this. That's just saying they don't like something about your value proposition. I'm looking at other options. That's great. Maybe you should compare other options before you make a final decision. Let's unpack what other options you're looking at, right? That price seems high. It's just a very simple definition of why your pricing is what it is, or explanation, excuse me. And this is where you use those sales ideas we'll go through next week. Objection. This is a reason that the customer will not buy. It's a hard objection. You are at an impasse, a hard stop. It will be stated as a hard stop, right? A lot of times, if you just give up here and go on to your next client, this is where you notice a huge erosion in your income. So literally you're investing your time and talent, but you're not getting a return for that investment because you're not digging down deep enough, finding the core issues and handling that objection. A good example, I would do business with you, but going to have to pass because your price is too high. That's an objection, right? This is where you use an objection handling presentation. Again, that's going to be 2 weeks down the road. Okay, how to handle questions. Restate the question to make sure you understand exactly what question they are asking. So Luis and I are going to role play this here in a minute, and I'm going to go fairly slow through the role play because I want everybody to be able to identify the question, the statement, and the objection that Luis is going to pose to me. When we do these examples, I do these examples as if Luis and I are doing what we do every day. We're actively engaging a client. What does that do? It also gives you insight into how we work on the backside as far as how we connect talent from your side of the fence, the contractor side, to the client side as well. Then you would trial close. Can you see, right? Can you see how this product would work best for you? Can you see why that price is actually competitive in the market? Can you see why you're making sure that the customer understands the point that you just made before you move on? Because if they have not, that question will be answered by a hard objection. Make sense to everybody? I know you're not on voice, so that's rhetorical, makes sense. move on with your presentation or your close. So you have a statement, you have a rebuttal, you have a trial close, you just move right through and pick up where you left off in your core presentation. Okay. Make a conscious decision to become a sales professional and watch your income grow exponentially. I cannot stress that enough. This literally is what makes the difference. Well, I'll regroup and back up to the previous part in the presentation. Building rapport, qualifying, unpacking your value proposition, but this will make the biggest difference in your pocketbook, in your check that you get or your commission check every month from that client, is how you handle an objection, how you're able to identify from a question, a statement, and an objection. All right, so Luis, you can take yourself off mute. So what I wanted to do today with everybody is kind of role play through a typical call that we have with a client, right? Before these meetings, we've talked about qualification. We've talked about unpacking your value proposition. And then now we're talking about handling objections. I'm going to start with the value proposition for Overpass. This is what we tell clients each and every day when we're reaching out to them and having discovery calls. Just so you know, a client will come in from one of 6 different lead sources. There's actually 6 different ways that a client will come to us as an account executive. It could be as they organically found our website, came on the website and registered. The second way they can come on is through pay-per-click advertising. So they found something in a Google search, landed on one of our landing pages, and then in turn ended up registering, which immediately gets passed to the account executive. The next way is they were advertising in a help wanted ad for sales development rep, business development rep, customer service rep, or account executive talent. We have a cold outreach program where we reach out to those clients in order to bring them onto the Overpass platform and have them post a job with us. The fourth source that we have is ideal customer profiles. These are larger companies that we reach out to that hire multiple people. They are usually what we call series funded companies. In other words, they are venture capital funded from a venture capital company, and they all have needs for rapid scaling or rapid growth inside their organizations, which is why it makes them very ideal as far as with Overpass. Our superpower is this: we can get you placed within 3 to 5 working days and have you training and working with that client. The fifth one we have is actually industry specific. The fifth and sixth are industry specific, where we have certain account executives that work specific industries. Let's say solar, or let's say another good example would be home improvement, or let's say they're working financial services, so mortgage brokers. They're industries in which we typically have very high success with a particular client type. And we know that we have you guys on the platform that are able to fulfill and sell inside that industry type or skill set. So all the account executives, specifically in one team, we have 10 account executives, so you know, in one team, all work those identified clients through like social media and other sources. And the other team works a list of people that we know have just received funding recently and are looking to rapidly scale their business. I just thought I'd break that down in today's meeting since we had a little extra time, just so you know how clients come to Overpass to begin with. There's a lot of different strategies of when they enter. That being said, our value proposition messaging, our approach may be different versus on each lead source type, but our value proposition is almost always the same. And the questions, statements, or objections we get from clients are almost always the same. So, Luis, you're my client. So I have just gone through qualification process with Luis. Let's say Luis owns a digital marketing company, a very typical client for Overpass, right? They're looking for 3 account executives to do full cycle sales, for example. I have already asked. I know that Luis has been in business for 3 years. His organization has 5 to 10 people in it. He is not venture funded. He bootstrapped his organization. These are all questions that we ask in qualification. So eventually in that conversation, Luis is going to ask me, as he's going to ask me right now, so what is it exactly that you do at Overpass? And go.
Exactly. Now, what I wanted to ask is, do contractors work for me or do they work for you?
Okay, Luis, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So basically what we are at Overpass is we're kind of the facilitator to get you to open up your remote sales team. All of the contractors will work directly for you. They will take your guidance, you will train, and you will be responsible for them and have control of your own marketing message. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that all sounds great. But I mean, I just don't like the fact that I have to pay you in addition to having to also pay the contractor.
Oh, I hear that quite a bit. We have other customers that feel that way and that I've talked to in the past. And I definitely understand your concern, but what we found is this: there's other alternatives in the marketplace. There's other sites. Usually what they do is they take part of the contractor's income. So let's say that you were paying somebody $12 an hour, that contractor may only be receiving $6 or $8 an hour of that compensation. Since we charge totally separate from our services and the contractor's pay and make sure the contractor gets 100% of their pay, how much better sales talent do you think we might get based on that philosophy or strategy, Luis?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Right. So the reason we do that, our fees are very low. Keep in mind that we want to bring you the best sales talent possible and make sure they get paid the money. So at this point, if you can see how that strategy works for you, are we to the point where you'd like to go ahead and post a job and we can get you an interview block set up?
Well, I just won't move forward unless you can give me a discount.
Okay. So what you're saying is this, that you see the value in Overpass, correct?
That's correct. I do.
And you see how you could ramp up quickly and get a sales team started in 3 to 5 business days. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So is your price objection based on what you think you might pay a contractor or specifically what you were paying Overpass?
Well, what I'm paying Overpass.
Okay, great. So let me ask you this. If you went through a conventional hiring practice, what would be the cost associated with that? Let's say you went to Indeed today. What would it cost you to post that job?
Well, no less than $300, probably.
Yeah, it runs about $300 to $700, depending on how much you want to promote it. And of course, that'd be just one source. You might also want to publish in ZipRecruiter or maybe LinkedIn Jobs, et cetera.
Mhm.
And then how long of a process do you think that would be before you could find somebody? Have you done that in the past?
Well, that just means that I would have to go through hundreds of resumes.
Right, exactly. It's a little bit painful, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
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 One of the benefits to using Overpass is obviously we've already pre-vetted the sales talent. In fact, in actuality, there's only about 1 out of 20 people that have ever applied to Overpass that have ended up having their profile approved and are actively ready and engaged to go to work. So does it make sense to you that that pre-vetted talent might present a value to you as far as money you might invest hiring in conventional methods?
It does. Yeah.
Great. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and I'm going to have you share your screen and we're going to go ahead and get a job posted for you and set up a time for an interview block. Doesn't cost you a penny to post a job. That way we can start getting the right talent to you and let you pick those folks that you want to interview. You'd mentioned before that you were looking between 2 to 4 people. How about that we go ahead and interview for 3 right out of the chute? Does that sound okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great.
Awesome. That's going to take about 3 hours of your time. So before we go to the job post, today's Wednesday. Would Monday morning or afternoon be a better time for you to interview?
Yeah. Monday mornings will be good.
Okay. Monday morning. How about 10 o'clock in the morning your time? Would that work out okay for you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. So that put us from 10 to 1. I'll bring 6 contractors to the table that we can decide on between now and Monday. And we'll interview 2 people for each one person that you hire. Does that sound like a winner?
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Go ahead and share your screen. Let's get this job posted in. It's all drop downs. It's going to take us about 5 minutes.
Let's do this. Okay.
And cut. Ching, ching. Okay.
Amazing. Dennis, do you actually mind unsharing your screen so we can see your lovely
Yes.
face?
No. I don't
Just
mind.
as we
I don't
go
mind at all.
through questions.
It's a come as you are party. You get what you get, but here we go.
Yep. Awesome.
I've got to find which of my three screens my little share button went to. Give me just a second, please.
No worries. And everyone, while I think that was so great. So everyone would love for you to either put questions in the chat, any reactions or feedback. Dennis, I don't know if you had a specific question you would want people to think about or bring to you as they, review this great role play.
Two things here that I would like to talk about and like you to ask towards, because I see a lot of questions in the contractor site on the Facebook page, the Overpass contractor page. I see a lot of questions about how our process works as far as how we board contractors, and any questions you have that's regarded that, let's unpack those, because a lot of times it's easier when we're face to face. There's no tone in text, right? So I can type something into the contractor group, but it may not have the full benefit. And then the second thing, obviously, is on question statements or objections and any issues you have typically in your contractor and even in past experience that you'd like us to unpack and maybe help you with a little bit.
Perfect. Thanks, Dennis. I see we have a raised hand from Walter. So Walter, I'm going to allow you to talk. You'll be on mute, so please unmute and you can go ahead and ask the question.
All right. Thank you for that one, Mia. And hello, everyone. And yeah, I've been in this kind of platform actually for just a couple of weeks, and I found out that this would be helpful for us as a contractor. Like, we get some ideas here by attending this webinar or this kind of presentation, and I would perfectly say that I've already find some clients here at Overpass. And yeah, during the presentation, it is an amazing, like, yeah, a wonderful experience because for me, as a cold caller, you must have the three C's, which is the clarity, confidence, and certainty, which is, I've noticed that on this role play, right? As a cold caller, handling objections is very important, especially like, for example, if you are trying to put some, like, if you are in a position of trying to do some eligibility process and doing some appointment settings, it is very important that you must have those three C's in order for you to ace or to close that deal. And having this kind of presentation, it is not only helping me but all of us here to get some more insights about what is Overpass and how does it works, and it's perfectly good for me. That's it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome, Walter. Did you have any questions in regards of how we work and how you find positions?
Actually, I don't have any questions right now. It's perfectly good for me right now. There's
Awesome.
a lot of client as well reaching to me, but unfortunately, my time right now is just from 1 p.m. up until 9 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. So I need to look for another client on that certain time. But yes, my client right now is actually doing good, and we're doing good right now. And
Awesome.
we're
Awesome, Walter.
and we're and we're pretty sure that our markets or our company will grow more, right?
Awesome.
Great.
Well,
Awesome.
Walter, I would encourage you to do this. Thanks for your comments, and Mia will go ahead and go, but I just want to make one final comment here based on the hour availability. If you have an afternoon shift available, look for B2C opportunities, business to customer, not business to business, because you will find that they usually have shifts in the afternoon and early evening hours up till
Yeah,
about 8 to 9 p.m. It depends on the time zone, but usually they'll stop calling around 8:30 on average.
yes, absolutely, Dennis. I'm looking actually, but sometimes the clients just only visit my page or my profile,
Mhm.
and yeah, I've handled different types of campaigns like solar, SEO companies, timeshares, healthcare insurance. Yeah, but I'm looking for the one as well that is, that can put to my shift like 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. But
You'll
Great.
find it.
because
You'll find
like,
it.
Yeah.
Keep looking. It may not be,
Yeah.
it may not be in
yeah,
a day or two, but you'll find it.
yes, of
Awesome.
It's
course.
there because we
Uh,
have a lot of those clients that come through.
awesome,
Great.
awesome.
Walter, so thank you so much for your comments. I want to make sure that everyone else can pitch in, but thank you again. Glad that your experience has been so great. And yeah, if you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat. I appreciate it. Aduvi, go ahead. You can unmute now, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I have a question about the process. I love the presentation earlier. I really have no questions right now about those, but I have a question about the process. I just had my first interview sometime last week, and I'm kind of confused because after the interview, I got what do you call it now? I needed to rate the interview and everything, which I did.
Interview feedback.
Feedback, thank you.
Yes.
Now, but I don't know if the feedback the client gave. I want to know if the interview was good. And how would I know also if they're going with someone else? Say I don't make this cut this time, or how would I know that the decision is still pending, or they're going with someone else, or eventually to come to me? Is there the way I could know this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Mia, do we not have a triggered response on the on-system interviews as far as?
We do, which is because I've asked Claire about this. So if it was an on-system interview, then he should have received an email with that automated feedback. I'll double check with Clara that that's still the case. But for on-system interviews, that is the case.
And based on that question, I want to unpack the two different interview types. Is that okay, Mia? Give me a second on
yes,
this.
definitely.
Super important, folks. Super. Everybody in attendance, and spread the word. We have two different types of interviews. An on-system interview is an unassisted interview or a company looking to reseat or scale that's already a client of ours. Those come out and they're phone-based interviews. They're on system. And we as account executives have zero control over that process, much to our dismay at times, but it is what it is. On new clients, what you will find is you will get an interview request from us for a Google Meet to attend on a Google Meet. If you get one of those, 50% of everybody that's on that interview block on average is going to get hired. Do not falter, do not fail, accept that interview immediately. Suit up, show up, and be ready for a great interview. 80% of our contractors hired are hired off of those Google Meet interviews, not on system interviews, just so everybody knows. It's an amazing difference as far as the average that's hired off platform versus on platform. On platform will only be a voice phone interview. A Google Meet interview will be live on a Google Meet in video. So I hope that helps as well.
Yeah, that helps. I just needed to know if I'm gonna get hired soon.
Yeah, we don't know because we don't have control over the process on a client generated interview, on system interview. I will tell you this, which may not be what you want to hear, but it is the honest truth, no matter what. On system interviews usually have a very low success rate versus a Google Meet interview.
It's fine. I'll just hope for the next one.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Hope
Thank
that
you
helps.
so much. So we have another question from J. Michael Martinez.
Yeah, I know him.
Says,
I know that fella.
yeah, I think we know him. He says the Indeed example was great in handling his objection. Who are some Overpass competitors? Do you have information on their costs and hiring processes to help those types of objections? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. I appreciate that. So do we have competitors of sorts? When it comes to the actual sales specific space, you can definitely categorize us as the 800-pound gorilla in the room. When you look at people that would typically be competitors, you have some very small niche players that have similar models to us. And then you have on the opposite spectrum, very large players. So like on very small players like Career Bloom and people of that nature that have very small subsets of what we do. And then you have the monsters, which are like Fiverr, Upwork, etc. Now, here's the dynamic differentiation there. Upwork and Fiverr are much more of a project-based platform. In other words, there's finite terms of the projects. And then the second dynamic difference is they all scrape your hourly income. They make their fee base by taking part of your compensation, hourly compensation, as their business model, which is very different. And then to go further on that question, it's basically like an Upwork or Fiverr model, or it's a third-party call center where the client is totally outsourcing all of their sales efforts to a third-party call center. We deal with this objection quite often. The one thing that is dynamically different is they lose total control of their marketing message. And I won't go through the whole objection handling presentation, but just explain the differences. That you won't have any control over your marketing message. They're paid a fee base based on appointments they set for the client or something of that nature. That's the most typical fee base. So what happens is they get charged for a meeting. And then when they get on that meeting, they figure out that the customer really, or the prospect really doesn't have a good idea of the value proposition to begin with the business. We have about, and just to give you an idea, Michael, very, very typical for me to have this conversation with a client. I know exactly how you feel. And based on what you've told me before, you've never experienced the active pain of going into those platforms. If you're dead set on doing this, I would encourage you to do so. What I'm going to do is put a follow-up call with you in 60 days because we have a 75% return rate on people that try those two solutions. And that's the gospel.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. Oh, I see Walter has raised, and we have another Q&A. Oh, he says thank you. Awesome.
Yeah,
so I see Walter has another question. Again, if you have a question, either raise your hand or put it in the chat, but we'll allow Walter to speak again. Go ahead, Walter.
All right. So just to add up, just to help some people here or some contractors here in this room, in order for you to get like a client, actually, my best practice is I put my achievements and the things that can describe me as a person, like what makes you a good fit for the certain position. You can just include it into your profile, and then lowering down the hourly rate or the expectations, right? But if you are confident enough, like you can handle this job easily, or you're just an expert for this, so you can go for a higher rate. But my best advice is just to maybe to lower down like a dollar or $2 something. It can easily get some clients. But of course, adding your achievements and what makes you the best fit for them, you can easily get the job. I I assure you on that.
I would agree, Walter, and just to add on to that, and I'm sure Dennis will make this point as well. Regarding the hourly rate, we've said ad nauseum at this point that you need to fill out your description in full, so you should be doing that regardless. But regarding the hourly rate, plenty of our clients offer commission. So when you're thinking of your hourly rate, you need to think of not only your requisite experience and what you're bringing to the job, but also the fact that there will be commission. So maybe your base isn't where you want it to be. Maybe you're at 10, 12, but that commission can bring it up to that 15, 17, 18, right? So be aware of that, because a lot of times contractors are like, oh, I want my base to be really high, without realizing that commissions can really help you in that respect. So Dennis, I don't know, you have anything else to add? And then
A bunch.
thanks for that point. Okay, thanks for that point, Walter.
Yeah, so on your base rate, the client is the one, and we ask them in the qualification process as far as what they're looking to pay on an hourly and then commission. A lot of times we actually work with them to design a compensation model. What we usually do when we're designing that compensation model, one, we're asking, what is the gross profit of your sale, right? And then we know that they can't, the best business practices says that they can't afford to spend over 20 to 25% of that gross profit in sales acquisition costs. So we break down that number. Then we break it down even again and go, okay, hourly versus commission. And we tell them exactly this: the perfect job opportunities afford somebody the ability to double their hourly rate if they do a solid job for you. So many of these opportunities, you actually have the option of doubling your rate. your base rate in the opportunity. Now, let me go one step further. There's three things we look at when we look for profiles, and understand that you are 3 times more likely to get placed with Overpass if you're going through an AE and not a system-based interview. Here's the three. We are looking at your previous industry experience. Whatever you do, make sure you have every industry you have worked in your profile, because if we don't tag that industry, you will not be found. You will go into the abyss of the talent acquisition dashboard and we have no way to find you. So super important to list every industry. List your sales related talent first, but even if it's non-sales related, put it in your profile at the end of your job descriptions, because if we know you have sales talent and have had exposure to that industry, we will select you for that interview block. Second thing that we look at is rate. Rate is whatever that we've worked out with that client that they want to compensate you. I will say that, like this last week, I looked at about 15 people's profiles and did a review. The most often thing I mentioned, you have no US employer experience, not a problem. You have previous sales experience. You will not get an offer at $15, $16, $17 an hour, ever. You are going to need to change your rate to the $8 to $12 range to get a contract. Once you have experience with US companies, you'll find your stock and trade or your hourly rate can constantly raise in subsequent contracts with subsequent clients. So the second thing we look at is rate. And then the third thing we look at is, are you tagged as ready to work or looking for opportunities? So those are the three things 100% of the time we search in the profiles. One step past that, since we have a little extra time today, I think this is a really important subject. The next most important thing, and the first thing we look at, your picture. Don't put emoticon in there. Don't put a picture of you, please, and make sure it's professional. If it has no picture, literally, we have a tendency to just skip right over your profile. That may sound crazy. Believe me, in our world, it's not. It shows us that you didn't put the effort in up front to make a professional looking profile. We're looking for sales pros. We're moving on. Second thing is your voice recording. If everybody should review their voice recording, and if it does not sound positive, energetic, no stops or stutters in that recording, and professional, that voice recording is the most important thing on who gets to an interview and who does not. And it may sound silly, but it's true. Because that is, if you look at it from our side, that's the only thing the client has to judge you on before you get to the interview block. So if you have any stops, stutters, background noise, anything of that effect in that voice recording, you can re-record it as many times as you want. There's nothing stopping you from making it better. I know that was a long explanation for a simple question.
No, it's good. And again, the TA team tells them all of this as well. So if you have not been told this already, then that's an issue, but you should have been told this a lot in your process here. I'm seeing we have Andrea raising her hand. So Andrea, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Oh, there she is.
Sorry, a little
No worries.
difficulty there. So yes, I actually had the opportunity to work directly for Overpass, trying to get people to hire contractors. So it was a very good experience. I think it was maybe 2 years ago when I first started Overpass. And one of the biggest issues that I faced while trying to get clients to hire a contractor was them having the time to actually go through profiles, go through the interview process. So, yeah, based on what was said earlier, those tips are really, really important. And hiring the rates as you go through each contract also does help. I started out, I believe, with $5 an hour on a couple contracts, and my last contract was, which I'm still under. It's been a year already in that contract. I'm at 13, and I'm aiming to get higher as I gain more experience. But it's been a real good experience. It's been the best the best jobs I've had have been through Overpass. So just wanted to share that with you guys and say that I'm really, really thankful for this opportunity and looking forward to continue working with you guys.
Thanks a million, Andrea. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's
And
great.
yeah, I have seen Andrea's name in the system from years gone by.
Yeah.
Do keep in mind that our sales process today is radically different than it was even a year ago. And if you want to
I would
blame,
agree with that.
if you want to blame anybody, you're staring at them as to the why.
Good to hear.
Yeah, but past that, this is kind of key, guys. Everybody listen to this one, it's kind of key. If the client doesn't have, and Andrea brought up this point, if the client doesn't have time to review all the candidates, us, the account executives, are picking who they interview. So whatever you do, be nice to your local account executive, because if you're not, your chances of being hired are going to be going down exponentially. You know, we want to put the best help we possibly can, especially on the first hire with that client, so they have long-term success and keep scaling out their teams. It's super important to us, but also keep in mind that we literally tell the client up front, hey, if you don't get back to me with the names, I'm going to fill your interview block with the people I know are the best qualified that we have on the platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis, and thank you, Andrea. We actually have another question, objection question from J. Michael Martinez. Dennis, he asks, when handling objections based on confidence in using Overpass, do we have existing clients who have or will provide professional business references for Overpass, or any existing client testimonials available to share with prospective ICPs? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, so we have a few little client success blurbs on the website. In our SMB, small and medium business team, we actually have a video that we share of an actual client by the name of Trash and Dash, Brett. In fact, he's my old client. So yes, we have those. It's very tough to get other clients to give, like sometimes we'll have clients go, well, I need 3 references. We're like, I'm not going to give them to you. And here's why. They'll always explain the why, right? Because it's intrusive for another client to have me continually reaching out to them for a client reference. We do have case studies. We have been doing this for 7 years. We have a lot of clients on the platform, and I can send you over some case studies and some client interviews that can help you out. So to answer your question, that's basically how we handle that.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions people want to pose in the chat, or you can raise your hand to speak live. We'll give everyone a few moments. We kind of had a slew of questions there. Give Dennis a break from speaking. Okay. So I think on more of like a general sense of the objections, Dennis, what are the most common objections you hear, and how do you address them? Like, do you have a template for like, you'll most likely get this objection, here's the best way to tackle it?
It's different for every product. Like we have that list specifically for Overpass account executives.
Yeah.
But when we break these down over the next 2 weeks, all of these, I'm going to give you enough of a backbone or template, and we're going to have some templates that you take home with you that are going to be available to you to take with you for like a feel, felt, found close. And you have to fill it in with your specific value prop and your specific product. It's not a catch-all end all. It's very product and client specific, or a reduction to the ridiculous, or a comparison close and things of that nature. That's literally what we're going to talk about next week.
Great.
And then from there, full objection handling presentations are 100% subjective to your client, your value proposition, et cetera. And so again, I'm going to give a format because there's a set format. Begin with the end in mind. Where are you trying to end up? Right? Opening question, need awareness, need satisfaction, trial, close, and close. It's kind of a long dude, but it's worth investing in and learning how to use it as far as the template, because it is they're basically called logic traps. And if you ask the right questions and build the need correctly, the client is going to tell you everything you need to close him. Got
it. And following up on that, Ever has a question.
Hey, there's Ever.
Ever. We love Ever. Ever says he needs to overcome I'm not interested. He doesn't want to sound rude or anything along those lines. So he might sound like that when he says, what exactly are you not interested in? So how do you usually address that objection, Dennis?
That's usually a feel, felt, found close, Ever. So, hey, I know exactly how you feel. And we've had customers that have felt that way before. But what they found is based on value proposition X, they find that what they invest versus the return on investment pays them back exponentially, whether that's in, it could be you're selling Netflix, right? And they're viewing pleasure to you're selling, like our example today of a digital marketing company, inbound revenue based on new lead sort. Now that's kind of a rebuttal, Ever. So past that on that particular objection, just so you know, and here is my feeling, and this is my belief, and it will never deviate until the day I die or no longer sell. The only true objection is money, because if your product was free, they'd all buy it, period. So I'm not interested is a diversion objection. You're missing something in your value proposition if you just get an I'm not interested. You've not expressed the value. And what you have to do, you can't just talk about more value. You have to recycle back to qualifying questions, ask them more questions to figure out what is their pain point or what your value proposition, where you're going to enter with what piece of your value proposition, then re-accentuate that piece of your value prop, then go back for a trial, close and close. But I'm not interested as a diversion, not an objection, just so you know.
Great, thank you. This is actually out of my curiosity, Dennis. When do you have to decide if a client would be too much hassle or is too difficult that you shouldn't pursue? Like you're on the phone and they're just putting up a fight and you're like, is it even worth it to try to close this sale? When are there cases like that?
That's a great question. That's why I'm on a lot of our demo calls. That in itself, because salespeople by nature want to close the deal, but that particular client isn't always a good fit. Now, let me give you the specific examples of when it's not. One, they only want to hire one person. In fact, in our organization, unless you have dedicated sales management, which is my second point, we won't let you hire one person unless that account executive gets permission for me directly to do so. Because if that client doesn't have scaling opportunities and they're so small, here's why we won't sign them. They don't have a dedicated sales process. They don't have a script. Many of them don't even know or have leads, and they don't have dedicated management. Now, let me give you the good news. 80% of those contracts fail in overpass. Depressingly bad news, right? So the key things we look at is the company properly funded? Do they have market segmentation? Do they know what client that they're selling to? Do they have dedicated sales management? And do they have sales process in place? Those are the 4 qualifiers that we're looking for in order for that to be a qualified candidate with overpass. An ideal client is venture funded, rapidly scaling, etc. But a qualified client has those 4 characteristics. They have market segmentation. I know who I'm selling to. I got an organized sales process. I know how I'm selling. I have market segmentation. I know, or I have a lead list. I have active leads of which I want my people to talk to, right? All of those are key. And I have somebody dedicated to the effort. I'm not the owner of the company that's going to give you 1 hour a week, because that's not going to get it. You're not going to succeed in that contract. Did I answer the question, Mia?
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question from Hannah. Oh, this is not an objection question. She says, I would like to ask what company name and industry should I put in the profile? Is it the BPO company I worked before or the foreign company that the BPO worked for? So I believe Hannah, I think I just approved her actually, is based in the Philippines. So Dennis, what is the best way for her to go about that regarding her previous experience?
It will look much better if you do not put the BPO firm, but put the firm in which you represented, because the BPO firm, nobody's going to recognize. But if you had a contract with AT&T, everybody recognizes that. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. So yeah, Hannah, go ahead and put the overarching company you worked for on your profile.
Yes.
Great. Good question.
That's a great question, actually.
Good question.
I see that all the time in profiles. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't list your BPO company. List who you work with. Because that's a recognizable name that people will engage with.
Awesome. We have a few more minutes, everyone. So I'll give a couple of minutes for anyone to ask any last minute questions or raise their hand to speak. but I think we got through a lot today. I feel like we got.
And I'd actually like to ask Luis a question since we have him on platform anyway. So just so you
Yes.
know, Luis started as an Overpass contractor and now works with the Overpass sales team. So Luis, what is your insight listening to all this from both perspectives? First of all, as a contractor, when you were a contractor, and secondly, and I'm talking about specifically the questions and answers, not necessarily today's topics, right? But as far as getting work, you know, as a contractor, what were the tips and tricks you used? And then now as a AE, how do you overcome objections with the clients?
Well, I wanted to say, I also, first part, I also started at a very low rate. I think I started like $8.
You did.
And I knew, you know, I could get more, but I wanted to just scale up, and I did start scaling up. Eventually somebody came and actually offered me more than I had posted. I had myself at 15 and he offered 17. It was great. So handling objections with the client, like directly with them, or with the client on the phone.
On the phone, let's say, when
on the
we're
phone.
signing them up. Yeah.
Well, it's just about asking questions to make them to like do the discovery, right? Like asking questions about their company, what they have already in line to get started. And a lot of the times when asking those questions, they realize like, oh man, I don't have leads. Oh, I don't have a script. Well, I didn't know I needed a script, right? Or they don't even really consider like, okay, so you're looking to hire somebody full time. Who's going to train them, who's going to you know, meet with them and actually follow up on these sales, and they just don't know. They're busy about their life, and Overpass was just like a plan. It was a dream without a plan, right? And I ran into, like, working as a contractor, I ran into a lot of companies that were just simply were not ready, and I took the contract. You know, it was startup. What I would be asked more frequently was, can you help me build a script? And then they would ask me, where can I get leads? Which is where, you know, I would know right away, this company is very young. They're not ready for this yet. And those companies failed, but I obviously did my best, helped out with the script, tell them where they can buy leads, but not every contractor will be able to do that. So
yeah, and along Luis's comment too, if you get into a client situation, don't be afraid to reach back out to us, because we have assets of where they can go to get leads.
Mhm.
We have assets of how to design an effective sales script. We have assets on a 90-day success plan with Overpass, right? So we have the tools to give to these clients to help them, but they have to help themselves. So sometimes it's possible to get with a client to where they literally won't help themselves. Make sure your profile is set to looking for opportunities if you identify that, because that client has a very high chance of failing with Overpass.
yeah.
If they don't have their act together, like super high chance. So make sure you set your contract on looking for opportunities. And I say that not because it's conducive to us as an account executive, because it's conducive to you as a contractor. To us, sometimes we have to reseat that account. To you, you're keeping your opportunities open, because if that account's going to fail, you want to be out of it. Make sense?
And may I add, sometimes they'll fail because they're barely waking up to the fact that they have to run a sales team. Right. And maybe, yeah, they'll fail with the first contractor, second, third, and then, like, I've got a client right now that has finally, you know, he hired about 3 contractors. Only one of them actually worked out, who is now working with him. And now he's starting to finally scale up after 3 months of failing. He's got the hang of it now. So now so those other contractors were just out of luck that they came in at the wrong time. But now this company is starting to scale up, and everything should work out fine for them and the contractors.
Right. And just because they own a business doesn't mean they have good business acumen.
Mhm.
That statement is
Yep.
golden.
Yep. We actually got a couple of last questions in our last few minutes, everyone. So I can answer this first one from Vanessa. She wants to know how to build a solid profile. So Vanessa, if you've been paying attention, you should have all the tools that you need. So professional profile picture, an hourly rate commensurate with your experience, a very, very solid, clear, professional voice recording, making sure that you're including all of your sales experience in that role section, as well as any industries that you've worked in, and being very clear. You want to include your roles and responsibilities, any quotas you had, just add as much detail as possible. Availability, make sure you have as much availability as possible. Given our clients in the US, they're usually working those 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. business hours. So you'll put those times in your time zone, and then it'll be translated to the client's time zone. So be aware of that as well. If you have all of those pieces, you should be good to go. And if you haven't yet met with a TA, they will also go over those details with you. So that would be my advice. And Leslie says, isn't the key to objections knowing your product? And I think the answer is yes, Dennis. I think that's probably what we're moving towards.
That's almost a foregone conclusion. I should have probably started with that. You need to have the value proposition of your product or service down pat. And not only do you have that down pat, but you have it segmented in pieces. And here's what I mean by that. You're not sitting there giving some dissertation to a client that's going on for 3 to 5 minutes. Craziness, never going to work. You have it broke into little pieces. So as you're asking qualifying questions and they're giving you responses, you can unpack that value proposition a little bit at a time of your product and service, and you will find your close rate grow exponentially. It is super, super, super rare I ever give overpass value proposition all at the same time. And I didn't give it all to you today, just so you know. We have a 30, 60, 90-day example we go through. We have, there's several other pieces of our value prop. I just tailed it off at the end to get to the actual conversation today of the question, statement, or objection.
Awesome. Well, I think we can wrap it up here. Really appreciate everyone being so active and asking questions. That's what these are for. So definitely feel free to come next week. It'll be part 2, bring your friends, and Dennis will continue his work on describing objections and how to handle them. So thank you all again for attending. We'll be sending out this information per usual, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now.